Okay, let's get started then. So aloha mai kākou and welcome to our last panel of the day, Finding Internships. SPIO was honored to have 4 incredible Pacifica professionals with us today from across our ocean, Sione, Alema, Christine, and Julia. Many of you surely have questions such as, how do I make my resume stand out? What are strategies that I can use to ace my interviews? And etc. In this discussion, our panelists will talk about how they found answers to these critical questions and share tips on how to land your dream internship. We will field questions at the end, so please write them down and send them in the comments box. First, to our panelists, please introduce yourself in the way you'd introduce yourself to a large group of people, such as your name, your position, your organization, any cultural affiliation, such as your island, your village, or your iwi, and tell us what your favorite internship was. I'll go first. My name is Greg Pomeka'i Gushiken, and I am the moderator for this panel discussion. I'm a Kanaka Maoli third year, or Native Hawaiian third year PhD student in ethnic studies at UC San Diego. I'm from the Aotearoa of Lu'ulu'ulei and Nanakuli on the island of Oahu. My favorite internship was in Washington, D.C. with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, working in Native Hawaiian educational policy. Next, we have Sione.
Mahalo Peter Greek, mahalo le kainga ko kungo ko Sione Taunga, ko lele mai me uiha mo pele hake I Taunga, ko ku whae ko a kesa ko ku tamai ko simote. Good afternoon from New Zealand, everybody. Thank you, Greg. My name is Sione. I am currently the lead navigator here at Tuputoa. It's an organization that helps Māori Pacific tertiary students into internships. I myself, funnily enough, haven't done an internship, but what I would say, my favorite internship has been life. And so I've spent time in New Zealand and overseas, and what I found is life has been my best educator, in addition to all the other institutions as well. But we'll elaborate on that as we go on. So thank you.
Mahalo nui e Sione.
Sweet. Talofa everyone, my name is Alema Fitisemanu. My family is from Samoa and Taunga. I'm a senior going into studying at Stanford University, studying human-computer interaction and art practice. My favorite internship so far will probably be my current internship. I work as a product management intern at a startup called BuildOps, which makes construction software. And so, yeah, it's just been a really crazy experience. So learning a lot. Thank you.
Mahalo, Alema. Next we have Christina. Okay, sorry, we're having some technical difficulties. So let's just pause for a second, and then maybe we can go to Julia and we can see if we can move this around a little bit. So Julia, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, cool. Is that all good? Not static? Okay, sweet. Hi, everyone. I'm Julia. I'm of Samoan, Chinese, and British descent. So my mum's from England and my dad's from Samoa, from Apia and Tula Ali. I was born in New Zealand and I am currently back in New Zealand after working in California, actually, for HP. I was recently the Global Social Strategy Lead of HP out in San Diego. Shout outs to anyone in San Diego. That was a fun time. And I would say that my experience right now, I've shifted out of the corporate world and I've, become a social entrepreneur, although I'm still sort of figuring out what that really means. I'm just kind of building an idea and hoping for the best, to be honest with you. And I would absolutely say that this has probably been my biggest growth period. Therefore, I'd say it's my favorite internship right now is stepping outside of a pre-existing organization and building your own idea and just running with that. holy smokes, yeah, the levels of learning and kind of new levels of understanding time management, productivity. How do you balance like work life when it's about your passions and purpose? I definitely say right now is a period of time where I'm really looking at this and going, yeah, there's no guidebook to this. So yeah.
Mahalo, Julia. And we can come back to Christine. So Christine?
Sure, let's test. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yay!
you. Awesome.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Imaizumi. I'm a native Hawaiian. I was born in Oahu, raised in California. I'm product design manager at Facebook. My team supports our financial and regulatory operations for the family of apps. And I also did not get the luxury of having an internship, but I have had many interns on my team. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk about that today. It's great to meet all of you.
Awesome. Mahalo nui loa. So for your introductions, and I'm so excited to talk about this with all of you. So let's just get right into it then. So our first question that we have is, do you have any tips on how to find the right internship? This can range from general guidelines to specific practices that you all engage in when mentoring, students and emerging professionals in your field. So we can start with Sione.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, first and foremost, you have to apply. And I say this like on purpose because we come across so many people who look at something and then they just self-eliminate themselves. So literally, it's just get out of your own way, apply, because if you don't, then nothing else happens from there. And in that sense, it's just find anything, because sometimes what we envision the perfect job or the perfect internship to be doesn't literally exist, but you'll find something along the way. But that doesn't happen if the first step's not taken. And so a big thing for us personally at Aotearoa is just stop self-eliminating yourself, stop overthinking, all these things that happen in your head as opposed to in reality. And we ask the question, when is the last time that the scariest thing has actually happened in person as opposed to overthinking? And so that's a big encouragement for us here at Aotearoa is put yourself in the place where something is able to happen, as opposed to wishing you had done something when the time's already passed.
Mahalo. Yeah. Alema?
Yeah, I would just say ditto that. I feel like going into college as a Pacific Islander, you're exposed to all these different fields and like software engineering for me, or like design, and you kind of think to yourself like, am I able to like do that internship? Am I able to go out there? And I think you just gotta like just do it, just apply. That's not your job to say no. That's like the recruiter's job. So like don't answer that preemptively. I think for me, finding internships, going into college, I really didn't know what field I was interested in. So I felt like for me, there wasn't really like a one internship, but just trying things that were interesting to me. So my first internship was a human factors engineering internship, and I didn't really know like what that was really. But it's just a time to like try that thing. If you like it, great. If not, you move on to something different, try something next summer. And so, I feel like also another thing, maybe it's just a Stanford thing, but a good opportunity is to do like research on campus. I feel like those are like pretty open if you have professors or other mentors that would like to take you on for research. Maybe you could do that first, and then you'd want to do an internship in the summer. So internships can take like part-time work or lots of different forms. So yeah, just try something out.
That's great advice. Totally. And I personally experienced that as well. So thank you for speaking to that. Next with Christine.
Yeah, I think really starting to network in the fields that you're interested in. So there's plenty of local meetup groups, and being that everything that's gone virtual, at least for the foreseeable future, you guys have a wider grasp now to go like join meetups that are not in your local space, and start to build your network that way. Turn some of those network folks into mentors. I can't stress enough to have as many mentors as you can that are going to help you. They're going to become your support network and your champions for your careers. And so that's one main thing that I tell folks that are looking towards internships, is to really start to build your network and get to know and figure some things out. We had an intern that was actually a software engineer intern that came to my company a few years ago. And that was what she wanted to do originally, and that's what she got the internship in. And then she started to see what we were doing in design and wanted to come over. So she actually spent the last half of her internship on my team. And then now fast forward 4 years, she's working at a design consultancy. So you never know. So just kind of keeping those opportunities open for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And Julia, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, cool. I mean, I'll just piggyback some of what's already been said, but I think the first point is give yourself the permission to succeed. And Sione, you mentioned that at the start. And I remember starting out in my career, I found this article, and it really spoke to the fact that psychologically and culturally, we're sort of always looking for permission and always looking for somebody to say, yes, you're allowed to do X, Y, Z. And the first thing I would add on to that is you can't be found unless you put your hand up. So unless you start signaling and you show interest, you're not going to be found and discovered. The next thing I'd also say is back yourself. I probably have a pretty rebellious streak in me, like cage rebellion, but be willing to go and do something really different. Like, you don't have to do what your mates are doing. You don't have to do what's cool and trendy, or like what LinkedIn says is the top 10 pathways to money, or whatever it may be. Like, do you, really cliche, but totally what I stand for in terms of own yourself, own your own vision for what a life that you want to lead, and however which way that comes to life, like, go for it. And the final thing I would say is, in terms of the networking, one of the things that I tended to do was just find people that really inspire me and backtrack, like look at what have they been up to? What did they do in their careers? Like, what were the random turns and twists that they were up to, and take that as inspiration for yourself, again, to just try and sort of like process of elimination, not starting at the surface level, but digging a bit deeper and spending time digging deeper into yourself, what interests you, and to people that you're inspired by, and to your own passion areas, which may not be advertised and may not be straight away what you'll find on the first call. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for speaking to that. That's so important especially for Pacific youth. And a lot of times it's something that we don't grow up with, at least I didn't grow up with. So I really appreciate you all speaking to that. The next question that we have is related. And it's surely a huge part of the internship discovery and finding process is preparing application materials. So what tips do you have for potential interns preparing their resumes and cover letters? So we can start again with Sione.
Cool, thanks, Eric. And so this is a funny thing, because we actually run workshops for all of those who come through the program. And what we say to them is, you need to know yourself before you can put it on paper, because literally that's what a CV is. It's a translation on how you see yourself and then putting that onto paper. So a big thing we encourage is that when you think you've finished it, give it to somebody who's close to you, who knows you well, because they may pick things that you've left out because we're being too humble. Yes, we're raised in this culture of humility, but sometimes I feel like we've caught the wrong aspect of it. And we think that it's like, oh, I'm just going to hide what I'm good at, and hopefully somebody will find me doing it by accident, and then they'll say, yo, you're good at something. But it's literally like just saying, what Julia touched on. It's actually saying it's okay. It's okay to say I'm good at this. And it's okay for me to put this on paper, and it's okay for me to send this off to somebody to say this is what I'm good at, and it's actually needed a lot more. I feel it's needed so much more. Just that whole, what do you see when you look in the mirror, and then saying it's okay to put that on paper. And so that's what I feel is because that makes everything easy. How you see yourself now becomes easier to put on paper, because you actually have the confidence that no matter what setting you're in, no matter what question is asked, I back myself, because this is who I stand on, this is who I am, and this is what I bring to the table. And that's the things I will encourage people if they're struggling to sort of figure out what to put in a CV and in a cover letter.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great advice. And Alema?
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like my knowledge in regards to like resumes and cover letters has just grown so much. Like in my period at Stanford, when I first started, I kind of would just put together like a general like resume of like everything that I've done, and then just like shoot it to like everybody, hoping that it would hit. But I think how that's changed is mentors have taught me to like tailor my resume to each job application specifically. So, for example, if you see the job specifications listed out, like you would want to link like those achievements and those like class projects all to those job specifications, making it clear as day that like I can do the work that you want me to do. So I feel like that's something that's been really helpful. Another kind of formula that one of my mentors gave me was to list like what you did, how you did that thing, and what impact that it had on your team or organization, so that they can see like how you work through things, when issues come up, how you would react, and also like what impact you would have in that company. And so I would say those are my top two. I guess in my design or product design internships, you need to put together a portfolio for those applications. And when I first started out, I didn't understand like what a portfolio was. I didn't know what it looked like, and actually had the head of Stanford's UI UX design like review my portfolio, and it was kind of like, at first I was like, oh, I got like totally like wrecked. Like she says, you need to change this, you need to edit this, you need to take that out. I don't know what this means, but it was also a good learning experience for me, because like you don't know until you know. And so just be humble when you get critiques, because it's only trying to make you better. So yeah.
Awesome. I love how you both touch on humility in different ways, and how that's both things we have to navigate. So thank you. Next we have Christine.
Yeah, I think echo everything that's been said already. And you guys kind of hit on the self-awareness aspect, and then Julia said this in the prior question of just being confident and like showing up and, being your authentic self, but also take credit where credit's due, because that shows up in your resumes, shows up in your interviews, which we'll talk about later. The only thing I would really add is, from a hiring manager perspective, I want to learn how I can help you. And that doesn't tend to come across a lot. So like, what can I do to help your, whatever you want to do post-college? That's just something I would definitely say to add in there in a cover letter.
Thank you. And now we have Julia.
Yeah, so I'm pretty out the gates as a human being, I'd say. And one of the things that my role now, like my roles have always been around strategy. So I've always taken that to mind, that I have to demonstrate how, like, if I can't win and if I can't get my resume over the line, then how are you going to really hire me as a strategist? Because I've got to help you win, essentially. So I did these random things, right? Like on one of my resumes, when I was in Sydney applying for jobs all across the world, which then got me to London, I put like a map on the front of my CV. Like I do random stuff, just because what I was thinking is like, again, we all know that AI is involved with CVs now, where they're trying to do like they're looking for words, yada, yada, yada. But I was like, I want someone to stop when they see my CV. So I had the map on the front. I had talking about how we all used to think the world was flat. And it wasn't until perceptions were changed, yada, yada, yada. So my job is, how can I help you change perceptions to drive growth in your company and your products and so on and so forth. So I just do like little trickster stuff to try and just get people to stop, because you're like one of 1,000, right? Or one of 600, or however many it is. So how can you get whoever it is that's going to be reading these resumes to like take a moment to look at what you're saying, and look at the fact that you're adding value, and what them wanting to have a conversation with you? Because once you're in the room, that's a whole nother ball game. But just getting somebody to be so interested and wanting to have a conversation with you, that's kind of the name of the game. And what I also would mention is that one of the things that I've noticed culturally is needing to take different approaches. So for example, one of the things I loved about America is, compared to New Zealand, you actually could talk and be confident, and people aren't going to think you're like too arrogant. Like you could actually have a really strong conversation, and I could share my opinions really quickly, and no one's going to think, oh my God, this young person's so aggressive. And that is quite a lot in New Zealand. We have that quite quite a lot. Like I'm 27 and I totally experienced that here in New Zealand. So I would say like play to the fact that it's a hyper competitive country, and in order to be noticed, you have to be able to hold yourself. And I love that we've talked about that again from a cultural standpoint. That is one of our inhibitors to success, is the fact that we hold ourselves back. So practicing with, and just imagining, like, if you really enjoy singing along, imagine that you're holding a conversation and you've got that same energy. And that's one, I don't know, there's a lot of points in that, but yeah, that's from lived experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julia. That's incredible advice. And I really am taken by your CV strategy. I think that, you know, all of you touched on very important aspects of our identity as well, right? So, you know, we have strengths and we have like different situations that we adapt to and you know, shift towards. And I think that each of you brought a very important perspective on that. So thank you. Our last planned question, which I'm sure we'll have other questions, is what are the best tips for a successful interview? So we can go in the same order, or you can chime in whoever feels like they can.
Preparation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh?
No, I just think that's my one thing, just one word, and one word, preparation. Like, oh yeah, I've caught myself in some hot water in that too, to be honest with you. Fully owning that is, if you're not prepared, if you haven't done your background work, if you haven't done your research, you're gonna be found out pretty quickly. That's one thing I'm just gonna quickly throw that in. And back to you, Sione.
Thanks.
Julia stole my answer, Greg, but I'll elaborate on that. No, I fully. It's funny because when we run our workshops with our applicants who are coming through, we talk about interviews as a really important aspect of it. And one question I like to ask them is, what's the point of an interview? And I just sit there and wait for the answers because they're looking at me funny and they're like, oh, to get an internship, to get a job, and I go, no, that's cool. But I highlight for them, this is something for me, it could be different for everybody else, but I highlight for them the purpose of an interview is that they remember you when you leave the room. Because there's no use that you sound like everybody else, giving the same answers and the same format and thinking, oh, I'm going to answer it how I think they hope I answer it or hope I sound. And so for us, tied in that is this whole essence of learn to tell your story. Because at the end of the day, that's what's unique about you, because nobody's lived your whole life. It's like we say it in the sense of like your significance lies in your uniqueness. And the interview actually allows for you to present that to them. And so that at the aspects of your story, you know, what is it that you've done? What is it that you've gone through that relates to the role that you're actually applying for, and give it in a way that's unique to you. I don't know how that is. That needs to be an individual thing. But once again, this comes back to this whole thing of like, you need to be you in the interview, because if you are not you and they say yes to you, now you have to be somebody else who you think they said yes to. So it's so important to be this, you know, we talk about bring your whole self, be your unique self, and that's a spectrum to that. But in the interview process, it's important to, you know, obviously be prepared, but at the same time, you need to be true to who you are and what you bring in that unique way in which you bring it. And so we feel storytelling, especially in the Pacific, you know, history of oratory, you know, orators. And so that's in the blood. It's there somewhere. If you don't think you have it, well, you need to take time to go and find it, because it's there. And actually the interview setting allows you to bring that out in a really, really authentic way. So yeah. Thank you.
I'll just quickly do this. One of the things that I ended up kind of from a personal experience was, when you round your edge, you lose your edge. So when you start rounding yourself out to fit into the environment that you think you're going into, it's like, well, why did you turn up in the first place then? If you're going to become like the wallpaper on the walls, like, what's the value add? Like, where are you? And one like, this is my trial and error, has how I got to this insight, is I thought I'd get this job at HP and I would be like Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs and wear a white t-shirt and black pants every day, and I was going to increase my productivity and reduce the amount of mental output every day because I wasn't thinking about what I had to wear. Oh, I lost all my creativity doing that. Like, seriously, it lasted for 1 week and it was just done. I was like, this is just silly. What am I doing? So to like piggyback onto that, I would totally advocate for bringing your whole self. And in terms of being remembered, like think about like, what are you wearing that day? I know it's silly, but sometimes I just wear like a full-blown jungle jumpsuit just because I knew someone would go like, holy smokes, what is up with this person? Which is, again, it's going to like leave a memory mark in their minds where they're like, whoa, do you remember that jungle jumpsuit chick? Like, what was she all about? So yeah, I'm going to sit back and be quiet again.
No, that's incredible advice. Thank you both of you so much. I keep thinking about, like, personally, like, I've shown up to academic conferences and even job interviews and, like, you know, aloha shirts or different kinds of attire. And I mean, we're wearing like the most expensive one I have right now. And, you know, it's just like that. I really appreciate, Julia, the when you round yourself out, you lose your edge. And I feel like that's something that a lot of youth can learn from. And I think that's something we all need to hold on to, right? Is why try to be somebody else when who you are is incredible and phenomenal even, right? That being said, so did Christina or Alema have anything to chime in with? You can go, Alema, yeah.
Yeah, ditto to everyone said. I feel like, yeah, I did that in just interview I had this past summer. I wore like my Samoa towel shirt, and I could tell that like people were like looking at it or like walking through the office. It's like, what is that? Like, like just like they want to like know about you. And I feel like, yeah, like when we try and round ourselves out, or when we try and take out like our cultural experiences or like our family history, our genealogy, what our ancestors have done, a lot of these processes, I guess, are like trying to be like our like hot topics now are like iterative like design or collaboration. I was like, this is what our cultures were about. So like, bring it if you got it. So I would say yes to that, and also along the line of being as prepared as you can. I feel like it was a great tip to me from one of my mentors to be honest when you don't know something. If they talk about a process or say like a product that like you actually like you've done your research and you like honestly I don't know much about that, be honest about that, and say like, but this is how I'd go about learning about it, and I'm willing to learn about it this way, and this is how I've handled new situations in the past, and this is how I work as a person. So I feel like that also goes a long way as well, that you're not trying to be like, I'm not a designer with 10 years of experience. I've only got like 3. So yeah, owning up to that, I feel like is important.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Just the authenticity that everybody's been talking about. And it wasn't like this even 5 years ago, where you couldn't walk into an interview with a jungle jumpsuit. So I love it. Like, I just keep doing that. Like, that is just show up with who you are and who you want to be, because it speaks volumes. I think around the storytelling, I mean, that is a big deal. Soft skills is something that I think folks that are going into interview settings, even for internships or jobs, that just hone in on your soft skills, your communication, written, you know, that's really something that I think people tend to forget, because they're always focused on like, I need to be the best designer, I need to be the best engineer. And you really got to do those, because those other skills show miles. The last little tip that I'll give, I think, is around how you formulate your answers to questions in interviews. So there's a method called STAR method, which is situational, task, action, and result. I believe they're starting to teach that in schools now. And so just really hone in there, because a lot of companies are using it. And it's a good way to kind of formulate your storytelling.
Awesome. Mahalo nui loa ya'oko. Thank you so much for your responses. That was such a great conversation. And I think that, you know, obviously a lot of what y'all bring to the table is, you know, very relevant to Pacific youth navigating these systems, navigating jobs, entering into this world that we're oftentimes not familiar with. So I really appreciate your thoughtful answers and very honest and very real answers. So now we're going to open up to discussion with the audience. So we have some questions that were sent to us, I'm seeing on our feed. But if you do have questions and you're watching, please continue to send them, and we'll try to field as many as possible, because we do have some time. We do have a lot of time. So the first question from the Q&A is, how can I find a mentor in my dream career? And I think this is picking up on something Christine said. So Christine, you want to start, and then we can kind of round robin it.
Sure. I think it's, like I said, with networking. So, and especially with school, you're going to have a lot of people that are coming in to speak to you. There's a lot of companies like Facebook, like, some of the large tech companies that come in and want to help champion and sponsor folks that are looking for internships. So find those people that are representing those companies and turn those into mentors. And then also, just like I had mentioned with the meetup groups, there's a lot of professionals that go to those. Those are not really geared towards students. They're geared towards networking for professionals. And those folks at least have a few years of experience in the industries that you're looking in. So that could be a great place as well. And then LinkedIn, be bold. Go message somebody that you like their background, like somebody had mentioned during this discussion. Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you for that answer. Anybody else?
I just wanted to add a perspective. As a student, I feel like another great way to like find mentors is through classes. Like if you take a class and your professor is like really cool. For example, like I took a virtual reality like psychology class on like how virtual reality like affects the mind. And then I ended up talking to the professor. I was like, hey, like, are there any openings in your research lab? And he's like, yeah, you can apply. And then I applied and I worked with him for a quarter. And I feel like, yeah, like everyone is open for networking, like your counselors, your teachers, and they probably know tons of people in industry that work like at Facebook for like Oculus or like VR and stuff like that. So just say, hey, I'm willing to try it out.
Yeah, one thing I'd say, when you're doing your LinkedIn messages, again, show rather, I know it's kind of tough because you're trying to ask for someone's time, but perhaps like also mention just the level of enthusiasm you have, because when you're asking for time, and it is, it's an equalizer, right? Everyone only ever has 24 hours in a day, and it's a leveler. And so understanding the value of taking someone else's time to spend time with you and just mentioning that, look, I might not have anything to give back right now, but I'm really enthusiastic about this space. I'm just looking, like, try and tailor your messaging so that it's really genuine, it's really authentic. You're demonstrating that you have a high level of engagement in this area, and not that you're just sort of like ticking the box exercising and you think that you can definitely tell the differences, because I've had some of those messages come through, and I personally have done them myself, and you totally recognize the difference between where someone's just sort of like bashing out 10 messages in a row versus somebody that's like spent time crafting, thought through, and has been like, oh, I looked at your experience and this is the part that I'm interested in, and in this space, and I'm trying to unpack this, or I'm finding it difficult. Like, show a bit of vulnerability there, because that really like shines through in the grand scheme of things. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Mahalo for your responses. I think that it's also really telling that, in these kind of situations, it's all about, like you all have been saying, being genuine, being honest, and being upfront. And I think something, Julia, that you said really struck me is that, how we, it being very like, what's the word? Realistic with like, I may not have anything to give right now, but here's what I'm trying to work through. And I think a lot of times, a lot of not just Pacific youth, but at least like in my experience, that has been something very difficult. It's like learning how to say like, oh, I don't want to bother my elders because they're busy, they're doing things. I have to wait my turn, right? But I think that what y'all really speaking to is like there is a way to balance that sort of like value while also, saying, hey, I genuinely appreciate the work that you've done, and I want to piggyback off of that. So thank you so much.
And one of the things that I think that, like, when you're storytelling that aspect, I remember people that gave me a chance. Like, I remember people that gave me half an hour, 30 minutes is the same thing, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, of their time. And that changed the course and direction of my life. Like, I remember those people that have gone before me and helped me out. And when you speak to that, it then encourages someone else to like recall on their own memories and go, you know what, this could change someone's direction. This could change their life. And I had someone that did that for me, or I missed out on that. Therefore, I'm open to giving that chance to somebody else. So, yeah.
So, Thank you all so much. So we can move on to our next question if nobody else has something to add. So this is a little bit related. So what are common interview questions to prepare for? And I think it might vary by your industry, but if anybody wants to speak to that, please go ahead.
I think a big thing we ask applicants to be ready for is behavioral-based questions. And so I think this touches on what Christine said, and so the answering format is the STAR model. But like, for example, is like, can you tell us about a time when? And so it'll either be a situation, like in terms of when you had to be a leader, or when you showed leadership, or when you had to be resilient, and the result of all of that. And so the whole response model of using the STAR is really good in terms of structure, but also it prevents you from just going off in different directions. You go around in circles and end up nowhere. So just having a structure is good. Obviously, it's not the only one, but it's just a recommendation just to prevent you from like not even answering the question. You just said something in the heat of the moment. So to answer one of those, also it's a basic format is like, oh, so this happened. This is what I had to do. This is what happened as a result of what I did. And then this is the outcome that happened. But one thing I would like to add to it is tell them that what you learned then, how you are still applying it now. So for instance, for me, I'm talking about a resilient aspect is like, so because I went through that, now I go into situations where I ask myself, am I capable of doing this? I always refer back to that time where I asked myself the same question. And then since I didn't quit then, why should I quit now? And so what you're sort of like, referring to is like, I just didn't learn it and just left it there. I actually still take those lessons and they're still relevant to me to this time. So in the whole thing of interviewing is, it's almost, I say, inoculate the next question. So they answer the question that you think is going to be asked after the question they asked. And so it almost subconsciously shows initiative. But if you can get used to it, it takes time. But that's something I'd recommend for anybody in that situation.
That's great advice. And I think that even personally, I just interviewed for something recently at the university, and I was thrown a lot of very theoretical questions about, oh, what would you do if this person had this complaint and, this other person had this complaint? And it's always great to just come back to, okay, what are like the hard things that actually happen? What are the experiences? What are the things? So thank you. Yeah. Does anybody else want to chime in on this question?
I'll just go for the beginning and end because they stand out to me. And one is, tell me a bit about yourself. Like that's up and down, guaranteed you're going to be asked that. And it can be quite confronting when you're asked that, like straight away, you're like, oh, what's my name again? And one of the ways in which I've gone about asking a question back is like, what would you like to know? Would you like to know about my profession or my purpose? Would you like to know about my cultural story, or would you like to know about my career to date? And kind of give it some more clarity. So for what I'm trying to land on is sometimes when the questions are very open and vague, and if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed in that time, look for clarity and take control back into that situation, which it does come with a bit of confidence and a bit of experience. But again, it shows initiative, it shows critical thinking. It kind of shows that you have an answer and you're able to answer in a way that's very articulate and is very curated to what they're really trying to achieve. But also it gives you an insight in terms of what are they really looking for. And rather than you just sort of like rambling off and they're like, oh, actually, I just wanted to know, like, what did you do yesterday? You're like, oh, snap, whoops, told you my whole life story. It just kind of, it helps to shape that first upfront question, which I think is across the board, you're going to be asked that. And then to another question that I would say everybody asks is, so do you have any questions for us? Which again, is like this nice, big, vague question, which you're like, snap. What's something really smart? And like maybe you're prepared and maybe you haven't, and kind of going with the flow. I have done that. But one of the things that I have kind of been having fun in asking are really like critical pointing questions. So if you've done your research, you may know that, for example, on their leadership board, they have a very low percentage of diversity and inclusion. So I have asked questions about that at the end of my interview, because again, it demonstrates the fact that you're thinking beyond. You're actually critiquing them as much as they're critiquing you. And I've asked them, like, so what is your diversity and inclusion strategy? What does that look like? How do you look to achieve a greater percentage of Māori and Pacific on your leadership board? Whatever it may be. So those are two questions and a kind of some examples of how I've gone about them, just to sort of, again, stand out, show initiative, show critical thinking, and showing that you're going one step beyond what is just what you can Google and in terms of how to answer an interview. So yeah.
Thank you so much. These are all really great responses. And I think I also like loathe that question as well. So I am like vigorously taking notes in my mind. So the next question that we have is, this is an interesting question. So can social media affect one's chances of being hired?
Yes. We always encourage people to Google themselves, just in case something pops up and you're like, oh snap, I didn't even know that was on there. And so, you know, if you need to make certain things private as a result of that, then we recommend that as well. But I guess, you know, I'm from an older generation as well. I think I saw Will Smith interview one time and he said, you know, we've done dumb stuff, but the only thing that's different is that we didn't get recorded. But I think, you know, this day and age is completely different. It's like everything's recorded, even lunchtime. So it's hard to convey this message of the importance of it until it actually becomes important to their situation. But if you can envision, you know, the future you, and I'm reminded of somebody saying, like, you know, the future you is what you're becoming today. So, you know, it's that whole catch-22 thing of like, you know, YOLO, yeah, do whatever you want. But then you're going to get somewhere and you're going to ask, why did I do that? So it is this whole instance of just checking. And if you have control over what you upload, then, you know, be responsible about that. But I do know there have been occasions, you know, because from what I understand is that the recruiting team will look you up via LinkedIn, via Facebook, all of that. So what you put out there will be seen one way or another from those who are interested in interviewing you.
But we don't have to worry about that for Pacific youth, right? Their parents will smack them right away, right? But yeah, I saw all of your faces. I saw that. No, I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, we look it up and, you know, things follow you. So you have a trail, you have an audit trail. So just be mindful of the things that you post or at least make public. But on the other hand, it's also a good way for people to learn about you and how you are outside of work. And that also shows a different dimension just than what you're on your resume paper. So.
Yeah, I'm perhaps going to flip this a little bit and be like, yes, sorry, there's a lot of sunlight coming into this window. Use it to your advantage. Like, you can leverage social media. It's just a tool. Like, again, it's just a tool. You give it power depending on what you do. And I just, man, when you said Google yourself, I was like, oh snap, I should do that. So I just Googled myself. Got a bit scared there. But you know, the way in which you're linked to different things, when you get involved with, like, get yourself involved with doing interviews, writing blog posts, post videos that are informative, get on YouTube if you want to, like, leverage it, because the difference between you and someone else can be how you hold yourself and how you're able to move yourself through the world. So yes, it is dangerous and it is something to be extremely mindful of, and know the fact that a lot of the organizations that you may be interacting with who are having, like, your bosses of older generations won't know how to do what you're doing, like, generally speaking, because they're not digital natives. And so use it to your advantage, show your expertise, like, show yourself in a way that is going to make you stand out further, and again, is authentic and is wholeheartedly you too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I really wanted to also flip that was the next thing I was going to do, was flip the question as well, because I realized that, you know, a lot of the opportunities I've had as, you know, someone who's been trying to make ins into the field, into academia, has been that Twitter and academia.edu and all these other things, these tools have been very useful to me. you know, especially within, you know, the Pacific Studies Academy, right? Because, you know, we're scattered across Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific, the United States, right? So it's been really useful for me personally to connect and meet people. And, you know, really, I really appreciate what you brought up, Julia, is that really showing your uniqueness and who you are and what you can do and how you really are. I think that comes back to the authenticity piece as well. So yeah, thank you. So this question might be good for, might be very specific, but the next question is, in the design industry, I was told that having a website portfolio is almost mandatory to be considered. With the major growth of technology, would having a website showcasing your skills improve your chances even from other career fields?
Elema, you want to take this one? And I'll follow up?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I was like reading it. Yeah, I was just like thinking about that second part of the question. I was like, I feel like I haven't seen like maybe like other majors put together like websites like for their work, but I would assume that it would be, at least like just my thoughts right now, that it would be helpful, like having all your work at a glance would be really nice for recruiters to know. But I definitely know like in the design industry, having a website portfolio is definitely needed.
Yeah, I think it can also be product management too, which I think you said that you were interning as well. It showcases kind of your thought process, and that's the biggest thing that you're looking for in a design portfolio is your approach. Obviously, the craft. So how well are you designing? But it's really just how you're approaching problem solving. So having something like that can also help with other fields too.
I would always circle back into like, what is your purpose? Like, what is the purpose of you doing this action? If it's just to do it to tick in the box, then you're obviously not going to have your whole heart and soul into it. Whereas if you're trying to achieve like, and if you're being intentional about it, then go for your life. Like no one's saying no to you, right? It's completely up to you what you want to do. Just remember, like, what is the purpose? What's the objective that you're trying to achieve? And how are you then therefore laddering up to that objective? If this is because you want to be able to have like a stronger digital footprint for when somebody actually does Google your name and you're actually controlling the narrative and the discourse around what they learn about you, man, do it. Go, like, I would. You can do mine as well, whoever wrote that, if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you all answered this question in different ways, because the first thing that I thought of when I read this question was that even within like, you know, as my own self, having graduated with like a political science degree as an undergrad and trying to go into like policy and going into that kind of field, it's very much about like, you know, very much about like, it's very different than academia, where it's very much the academy, where it's very much about like, oh, what is your brand? What kind of research do you do? What are you known for? What are the skills that people can rely on you to do? You know, and obviously a lot of it is unpaid labor in the American academy. But yeah, it's been very important across fields, I think, to have like some kind of portfolio. And I think even as for myself as a freelance writer, it's been very important to have that writing in one place so that people can see what they're hiring me for, as well as, you know, trying to get that together. So I really appreciate how you all answered it differently. And I think this fits really well into the social media piece that we kind of talked about a little bit before. So thank you. So
I'm just going to jump in one more time. It can also lead to opportunities. Like I've had work opportunities come through my LinkedIn profile purely from somebody saying, honestly, I love how much color you wear. Can we talk? Because I want you to host my strategic workshop. Because they're just like, they love that I've got a lot of energy. I've found best friends through like websites. I've found like, I found I found business partner. I found my current business partner through LinkedIn, through a random LinkedIn like, and then we got on a call, realized we have an alignment and passion. So like all of this stuff, like intentionally putting yourself out there. Again, there's obviously natural dangers around anything that's online, but you, again, will only be found if you put your signal out there. And the stronger that you are holding yourself, the more it's going to draw in the right people and draw in the right opportunities, because you're being your whole true self. So yeah, I just jumping on with another 2 cents.
No, thank you so much. Okay, so our next question, because I'm realizing we have 10 minutes left and I kind of want to get through the questions. So The next person asked, I've never used thank you cards after an interview. Do they really help?
I'd like to say
I feel like from
Elema.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. I feel like, yeah, they do really help. And even if you can't get a card, like just an email or like a follow-up afterwards, just showing like this common courtesy and that you're, as Julia said, like you're thankful for their time that they gave you. And I feel like it also ties into just how you do your whole interview kind of period, how you treated that person throughout the interview process and how you met with the team members. I feel like all of that reflects like not everything is able to be shown like through your resume, but how you are as a person and how you like treat people in person. And so I feel like, yeah, do cards and also be like really like nice and courteous throughout the whole interview process.
Yeah, just adding to that, Eric, I think there's a whole saying, go the extra mile because it's not crowded. So this ties into this whole thing of what makes you stand up. But obviously, if it's not you, don't do it. Like because then they'll be like, if they say yes to you, then they're like, well, where's my thank you cards? so if it's who you are, then obviously do it. I would also recommend to do it handwritten because if you send an email, it go to their junk mail or it just gets lost depending on how busy their inbox is. But and then just because it's not very common anymore. And I don't even know if people can still handwrite. I don't even know if they have the ability to do that. But if you do, I would recommend that you do a handwritten thank you because once again it just adds to helping you stand out in that regard because how many others would do it? And I wouldn't say many.
Does anybody have anything they want to add? Or this is a really interesting question because I think that in certain circles this is very clear. I know that in Washington, D.C., our training was every time you have a coffee with someone, it's a follow-up with a thank you, an email, and a text or any kind of outreach, right? So, but yeah, thank you for answering that. This is a great response.
Yeah, I'd say it's like in our code too, like culturally as well. Again, it's just like common courtesy, respect, like this. Yeah, I don't know about if it really helps. Like again, you won't know until you do it, but it definitely is something that imagine if you were in their shoes and when you are in their shoes and when you do become boss as hiring managers, like wouldn't it be nice if people did that to you? Like I just think about this all goes full circle, our social enterprise recently got funding and we obviously sent like a nice thank you letter thinking that everyone else would say a thank you letter. And that one of our mentors from the fellowship, she's like, you were the only ones that said thank you. I was like, what? You mean people got given money and they didn't say thanks? Like, what are you doing? Like, seriously, ungrateful. But like you just, you don't know that you're the only one that's doing this. So yeah, totally.
Absolutely. And it's right. It's definitely about, just common courtesy at some point, right? It's about these are people. It's not like there's some granting agency that's not human, these are people who are making decisions, right? I think a lot of times we kind of like operationalize that too much. And I'm glad that you brought that up. The next question is a little more practical. So we got 2 left, but how do you keep track of your network? And I know some of you talked about LinkedIn, but if you want to expound upon that a little bit, because I think this would be a very useful thing to talk about for people trying to find internships. So.
Okay, I don't do this, but I know other people that do this, and it blows my mind. So they, for whatever interaction they're going into, they either have like an Excel spreadsheet and they have looked at the list of people that are attending an event or they're attending the meeting, and they've gone and identified the people that they want to discuss and have conversation with, and what is the intention of that conversation. And they're literally mapping, again, I do not do this, but some really organized people do, and that's how they start tracking, is they build Excel spreadsheets to like look at, again, did we like reach out, email, coffee, yes or no, question that intention, follow up, yes or no, so on and so forth. And it's kind of like lead gen, honestly. It blows my mind. It's like they've got a sales funnel going on here. So that's what some people do. That's not me personally. Mine's purely through LinkedIn, as you mentioned, and just writing, like a bit of a to-do list, whatever you may call it, and just doing reach outs and responses and just trying to remind myself that I understand that I'm busy, but so is everybody else, and how I can hold myself to my highest degree is important. So those are example of what someone else can do and what I do.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to chime in on this question as well?
If you can get good at remembering people's names, I can tell you right now, that's a really handy thing. So I don't know if you can connect a name to a face, if that helps you, but just being able to like meet with somebody, oh, hey, Greg, it's nice to see you again. And they were like totally blown away just by that simple act of you remembering somebody's name. So if you're able to do that, or if there needs to be some way that helps you do that a lot better, I found that that's quite a huge thing as well, just from a relational point of view.
Yeah, thank you. These are great. These are great pieces of advice, and I think that it's really important, especially to remember that the interpersonal skills are so like overlooked in this process, right? We think that it's some kind of like abstract like formula to win, you know, the position, right? But it's really about building relationships and, like you said, Sione, like really just recognizing people for who they are and like remembering their faces. Yeah, so thank you. So the next question is, if you have any thoughts on unpaid internships.
No. Okay. I mean, I think one of the things that you tend to learn is that your time is the only thing you have. It's the most valuable. So I don't know what this person may have meant by unpaid internship. Get paid for what your skills are. Unpaid internships can be more of like your networking and your extracurricular things, organizations that you're joining, things like what South Pacific organization here. That's just my 2 cents. Alema?
Yeah, I want to say, like, just as a student, if you're trying to pay for school, like, we can't just do it unpaid. I feel like, yeah, this is kind of like a larger conversation, kind of like equity and like class. Because like lots of my classmates, like their parents are like billionaires, millionaires, while I'm over here like from Samoa, like never touched $1 million. But yeah, those kids are able to like take on those unpaid internships, and so it's kind of like an expectation for you to do the same. But as a low-income student, I was like, get paid for your work and get paid well so that you can continue to be able to do that work. You'd be losing money if you are doing an unpaid internship and still have to pay for living expenses. So yeah.
I just want to jump on that too, because people can be taking advantage of you in a really nice way, and you might not know that they're taking advantage of you. And I personally have had that, and even in job interview processes where they'll give you a brief of a piece of work that will be the piece of work that's attached to the job if you get the job. And they'll say to you, can you show us how you would approach this sort of like problem or brief? And you need to be mindful that that's your IP. That's your IP that they're getting for free from you to end this job interview process. And like, just watch your back. I don't know, protect your neck here and have conversations with people around you if you feel like this feels kind of funky. And I know it's a confidence thing. I know personally it's a confidence thing for me even now to get used to like feeling, is this all good? Is this legit? So have conversations and just get support around you if you're feeling a bit unsure. That's one thing I definitely say. Did we lose Greg?
I think we did.
I think for a little bit.
He's back.
Hey!
Welcome back, Greg.
My apartment internet is usually really good, and we also pay a lot of money for it, so I'm kind of like, why is it cutting out? But yeah, no. I missed whatever was said after that, but thank you for answering that question.
This question makes me so hot. Like, sorry, not to like keep at it. I'm sorry. This one's just like, do not devalue your time, your skill. Don't do it. Do not do it. And I think back to kind of the cultural aspect of this, we tend to want to help all the time. I see it, you know, and even especially in as elder wise, they always want to help and they get taken advantage of. So yeah, this one is no way.
Yeah. That's so true. And I think that a lot of us tend to think that, oh, I have to learn, I have to like earn this right to do this. But you're right. Your time is absolutely your most valuable asset. And I think that, I agree wholeheartedly. So thank you all for addressing that difficult question. So our last question is, how can you highlight your culture, our culture, your culture on your resume? Is that possible?
Yep. I mean, again, I come from a person that's out the gates when it comes to resume. Don't do the black and white thing. So I've had friends that have either had borders around that have shown like icons that are of Pacific. You'll notice that they're of Pacific culture. You can either like have obviously your language involved, and you can actually have your full name in your own language. There's a lot of different cues, like visual cues, text cues, so on and so forth, that you can just like you're adding flavor in their eyes, but really you're just adding yourself and just being your full self. So you can just be creative and clever in that way if that's how you want to go about it.
I find this question interesting because I never led with it. I'm obviously much older, I think, so I never, back when I was doing a lot of this stuff, I never led with my culture. Never. It wasn't like that. It wasn't something that we spoke about. It was just kind of like, what's your hard skill, and sell it that way. So it's inspirational to hear you guys coming forth and doing that. So yeah, I have nothing else to add, but just that I'm really glad to see the progress.
Yeah, I feel like I would just like to add what Julia said, that I feel like for like my design portfolio, I'm able to like put like kind of like artwork and like Pacific Islander like designs as well, and I linked it like to my art blog and how that connects to my process in designing technical products. And so I feel like also in regards to culture, you can talk about it in your skills as well. Like if you're involved with your Pacific Islander community within your local organization, talk about like what does Fa'a Samoa mean, and like how that translates into working together as a team in the organization you're applying for. So I feel like sometimes it's scary, but I feel like this is kind of like maybe a cultural like shift that's happening, is that people are more upfront with their Pacifica identity. And so it's going to be weird at first. I guess like we're trying that now, and it just gets better with practice and how you integrate that into your application.
Yeah, I think just simple ways to do it. Like, if you're able to write in your mother tongue, or one of your Pacific languages, simple way to do it. Like, simple way, just type like okungo ko Sione Taunga, and then you can translate it into English. If people need to, and I mean, it's like we've talked about it this for the past hour. It's like it's who you are. It's who you are. So it's not something that that comes in addition to who you're presenting for. It's actually, it all ties in together. So why would you leave it out? And how you do that, I think, is the beauty, because that's actually up to you. So if it's a border, then cool. If it's an introduction, cool. If it's a cover page with the award map on it, even better. So it literally just depends on, like, that's the cool thing. I think this is the thing we all need to remember too, is like, how you present it is you, and that's unique, and you need to recognize that. And I don't know, whatever helps you bring that out, then let this be a platform for you to start doing that. So yeah, I'd definitely encourage somebody, if that's how you feel would help you, but also help you stand out as well in the process, then by all means, go for it.
I'd be happy to share my resume if it's of help too, just to show an example, like, and I can show you the random world map one, and I can show you the current one, like whatever works, just to kind of highlight some examples of how someone out the gates has done it, and you can scale back from there or take it another step forward. I would love to see other people's resumes too, because it's heaps of fun. Like I've got a little section which is just purpose, and it's just on purpose, and I've just written, I'm extremely passionate about Māori and Pacific increasing their digital literacy. And again, that tailors into like, yeah, you want to read about my professional aspect, but don't get it twisted. I'm very purpose driven and purpose focused. And calling that out on your resume can be quite a clever way to show, well, like, we're multifaceted creatures, and I still don't even like resumes. I'm anti them, because we should not be defined by one piece of paper, like stuff that. So you leverage what you can within this piece of paper, this restriction, and show your multifacetedness.
Mahalo nui loa to all of the panelists. Y'all are so like incredible forces within like the community, and I really appreciate your thoughtful responses. You're all such inspirations to the Pacific community, and the work you do is so important. So for those tuning in, could we please give a virtual round of applause for our panelists? So mahalo nui for coming to our last panel of the day, Finding Internships, and we hope to see you tomorrow for our discussions on careers in STEM, entrepreneurship, and the arts, which will be very exciting. So hui hou kako, take care, and thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, everybody. See you all.